I don't know how many now. It's been so many I've forgotten how many of these I've done. A number of years ago, I looked up some stats about Memorial Day and what it actually meant. And I shared them, and it has now grown into something even more, and it actually means a lot to me. It's one of my most looked forward to 10, 12 minutes. Hopefully I can keep it to 12. 10 or 12 minutes of my year for you here. So a little bit about what Memorial Day actually means. The information that I have pulled came from a couple of people that I talked to, as well as some various websites online. So some of this is not my own doing, so I'd give credit to the internet and some information here. So Decoration Day was officially declared on May the 30th, 1868 by General John A. Logan as they decorated 20,000 graves in the Arlington National Cemetery. During World War II, it was expanded and named Memorial Day to observe all Americans died in military service. This year, I heard nearly 250,000 graves were decorated in the cemetery. Over 1.3 million lives have been lost on the battlefield throughout the wars of history. And many, many lives lost once our soldiers came home. The thought of how many people have suffered after they returned home is mind-boggling to me. I asked Cecil Heidelberg, what do you see when you see a man in uniform? And Cecil said, I get chills every time. I know what they are sacrificing, and the fact that they are willing to serve gives me chills. I asked him, what was it like when you left? Do you remember when it was? Everything I looked online, every single veteran can tell you the day, maybe even, certainly the month, most of them the day, the year. I mean, this is an impactful thing when they left. I said, what was it like when you left? Do you remember when it was? He said, absolutely. It was September 1968. It was midnight when I climbed on the plane in the dark as my wife and one-year-old son stood watching me leave. I didn't know if I was ever going to see him again. Bill Dollahite, 23 years old, walked into the headquarters of the brigade in the middle part of the country to receive his orders. The captain looked up from reviewing his paperwork and said, I see you went to Ole Miss. Yes, sir, Bill replied. And after a lengthy pause, the captain said, I went to Mississippi State. The next day, Bill boarded a helicopter, and 112 days later, he returned. And he said, I always blamed that captain from Mississippi State as he held the power to screw with my life, as he laughed to me. Bill said that the greatest responsibility he has ever had in life was the responsibility to 44 18-year-old men fresh out of high school, and they looked to him for him to bring them home. He was 23. Fortunately for Bill and every one of his 44 men that he was over, they all stepped foot on American soil. So my question for you to ponder today is, how does freedom sound? Well, it sounds like children playing in the yard. It sounds like 80,000 football fans cheering as Mississippi State and Ole Miss play the Egg Bowl every November. Freedom sounds like the normal everyday conversation with your family and friends as you share a cold beer standing next to a charcoal grill on a Sunday afternoon. It even sounds like the absence of sound as I sit 30 foot in a maple tree every fall in the middle of the dark, waiting for the sun to rise and waiting for a once-in-a-lifetime buck to walk within bow range of me. The sound of freedom also sounds like the horns in a traffic jam or the disgruntled customer who has just had the worst day of their life. How can it be anything unlike this sound of freedom? Unfortunately, what you're hearing is not the sound of freedom. It is unequivocally the sound freedom creates. So what does freedom actually sound like? Freedom sounds like the sound of a helicopter blades and propellers piercing through the smoke-filled dark sky. Men lying in mud-filled trenches with bullets zipping over the top of their head as they listen to their commanding officer who orders them to rise out of the trench, push forward, and take the hill, knowing some are going to die. The sound of machine guns, bombs, and heavy artillery filling the air, and yet the eerie, quiet sound of the night in the jungle might be worse. I ask you again, what does freedom sound like? The cries of a wounded and dying comrades lying on the ground, the loud message a soldier hears from the lifeless, dismembered body lying next to him on the battlefield. This is what freedom sounds like. For without all this sacrifice, without the courage of every man or woman serving this great nation, regardless of whether or not they were drafted or volunteered, the absence of bloodshed, freedom would sound much different today. A sound unlike anything any of us can imagine. Bill Dollahite told me he views his service as his rent payment for freedom. It wasn't until this morning I realized the impact of one word of this statement. Rent. Freedom will never be inherent and will never be owned by this great country. We simply rent freedom, and we pay this rent at the highest cost, life. Let's remove our hats, bow our heads for a moment of silence for those who've paid this great ultimate rent, and pray for those willing to do so now and willing to do so in the future, for without all of them, we don't play golf, we don't go to work, we don't live the life that we only know. We live something else, which is unimaginable. I want to thank all of you here this morning that have served. I want to thank all of you who have family that have served and have paid the family sacrifice. And if you know anyone that's in the service and that's in your family, I'm sure you are very, very proud. We're proud you have paid the rent for us. Have a great day today. When you finish up, we'll be at the 19th hole. Have a great time. Make your way out to your hole. Once you get there and the coast is clear, go ahead and start golf. Everyone, thank you very much.